A torch flickers in a deep cave, revealing a painted beast that science cannot name. Ancient artists left behind a global gallery of impossible creatures, and these 25 mysterious cave paintings are among humanity's most profound puzzles. By the end of our journey, you will see the dawn of human imagination through its most cryptic and enduring symbols. Were these images records of animals lost to time, or portraits of beings that never existed outside the mind? We will travel from the deepest caverns of Europe to remote islands, examining each enigmatic work. What do you believe our ancestors were truly trying to show us? This artistic revolution was born in a world of ice and shadow, over 40,000 years ago, as the last great glaciers held vast territories in their frozen grip. Our ancestors began to leave marks that were more than mere survival. They began to tell stories. This was the Upper Paleolithic period, a time when the human mind awakened to the power of symbol and myth. Deep within the earth, in chambers untouched by daylight, they mixed minerals with animal fat and water, creating a palette of red ochre, black manganese, and charcoal. These were not casual doodles in convenient locations. Reaching these canvases often meant crawling through narrow, treacherous passages, a deliberate journey into the underworld. The act itself was likely sacred, a ritual performed by firelight in echoing stillness. For generations, the focus of study has been on the magnificent and accurate portrayals of prey, the bison and mammoths and horses that sustained life. But alongside these familiar forms exists another gallery, one filled with silhouettes that defy simple classification. These mysterious images were created with the same care, the same skilled hands, and placed within the same hallowed spaces. They were not mistakes, they were deliberate entries from a reality where the lines between the living world, the spirit world, and the world of memory were beautifully, intentionally blurred. To see them clearly, we must first try to see through the eyes of those ancient artists, for whom every stroke on the rock was a conversation with the unseen. And it is with that perspective that we encounter our first true enigma. High on the cave wall, in a chamber deep beneath the French Pyrenees, the Sorcerer of Tuafrias dances across millennia. Discovered over a century ago, this figure is not a simple painting but a profound fusion. It stands upright on human legs, yet its head is crowned with the full, sweeping antlers of a great stag. The piercing eyes resemble those of an owl, a tail swishes like that of a wild horse, and details hint at the attributes of a powerful feline. This is no careless sketch. The sorcerer is captured in a dynamic, almost leaping posture, as if caught in the midst of a ritual dance. Its position is commanding, overlooking a vast panel of more recognizable animals like bison and reindeer, a silent overseer in a gallery of the mundane. The immediate question is one of identity. What or who are we truly looking at? The most enduring theory suggests we are witnessing a shaman, a spiritual intermediary dressed in a ceremonial costume crafted from hides, antlers, and feathers. In this view, the painting could be a record of a sacred performance, a moment where a community leader transformed, through ritual, into a bridge between the human world and the spirit of the hunt. Other interpretations venture further, proposing the sorcerer might represent a deity, a master of animals who governed the fortunes of the hunters, or even a mythical ancestor, a being that existed in stories long before it was ever painted on stone. What makes the sorcerer so foundational to our exploration is its deliberate ambiguity. It refuses to be just one thing. It is a composite creature that actively dismantles the walls we build between species and states of being. Human, animal, and something entirely other are woven together into a single, powerful image. Its prominent, almost supervisory placement in the cave signals that this was no minor symbol. It held immense significance, a key to understanding a world view where transformation was possible, where the essence of different creatures could be combined to access greater power or knowledge. This idea of the composite being, born in the flickering light of Tuafrias, is not an isolated anomaly. It is a recurring theme, a thread we can follow to other caves where the rock itself seems to dream of impossible forms. Yet the theme of human and animal essence merging takes a startling turn just a few hundred miles away, in a place celebrated for its artistic mastery. Within the labyrinth of Lascaux, a cave so abundantly decorated it feels like a prehistoric art museum, lies a chamber that tells a very different kind of story. It is a deep, narrow shaft separate from the grand galleries of thundering herds. Here, the artists painted a scene of stark drama and profound mystery, known as the Shaft of the Dead Man. The composition is simple yet charged with narrative tension. On one side, a massive, powerful bison stands wounded, its entrails spilling onto the ground, its head lowered in a final, defiant charge. Facing this dying giant is a human figure, but it is unlike any other human depiction found in Paleolithic art. The body is a simple, almost childlike stick figure, lying on its back as if it has fallen. But the head is not human. It is the distinct, elongated head of a bird, complete with a pointed beak. Nearby, a bird is perched atop a simple staff or pole, completing this strange avian trinity. The contrast is deliberate and jarring. The animals in Lascaux, like this bison, are rendered with breathtaking anatomical precision, a testament to lifetimes of observation. The human, however, is schematic, almost an afterthought in form, yet made unforgettable by its otherworldly head. This is not a portrait of a person, but perhaps a portrait of a state of being. One compelling interpretation is that we are witnessing a shamanic trance or vision. In this reading, the bird-headed man represents a spiritual traveler, his soul journeying in a non-human form. The wounded bison could symbolize the spirit of the hunt itself, engaged in a final, metaphysical struggle. The bird on the staff might be a spirit guide or a symbol of the shaman's ability to traverse different realms, much like a bird takes to the sky. Other scholars see a more literal, though no less tragic, story. Could this be a record of a hunting accident where a man was fatally gored by a bison? The bird head, then, might not be a physical feature but a symbolic representation of his departing spirit or soul, with the perched bird awaiting to carry it away. This introduces an astonishingly early concept of an afterlife, a soul separate from the body, taking the form of a creature that can fly beyond the earthly realm. What makes the bird-headed man a cornerstone of our understanding is its clear demonstration that early humans did not simply paint what they saw in the physical world. They painted what they experienced in the spiritual and psychological one. They integrated themselves into their art not as proud hunters, but as vulnerable, transformed participants in a cosmos full of power and mystery. The recurring bird motif here is not accidental. It suggests a deep, cross-cultural fascination with avian qualities, flight, perspective, and a connection to the upper world, which we will find echoed in caves thousands of miles and thousands of years removed from Lascaux. This idea of transformation, so vividly shown in the French caves, was a global whisper in the ancient human mind, one that would find startling expression on the other side of the world. But Lascaux holds another secret, one that challenges our understanding of observation itself. Among the herds of perfectly rendered horses and charging aurochs, there is a figure that simply does not fit. It is a large, powerful beast with a sturdy body, a strangely bearded chin, and a prominent dark stripe running along its spine. Most strikingly, it possesses two long, straight horns that spear forward from its head. Early explorers, baffled by its form, gave it a name that has stuck for decades, the Unicorn of Lascaux, though its twin horns make that title a profound misnomer. This creature stands calmly yet imposingly in the Hall of the Bulls, surrounded by animals we can name with confidence, and that is the core of its mystery. It is not hidden in a shaft or a secluded chamber. It is placed proudly among the familiar, yet it remains utterly unfamiliar. The immediate and practical explanation is that the artists were simply depicting a wisent, the European bison, but got the horn shape wrong, perhaps stylizing them or working from a fragmented memory. Yet this feels unsatisfying. The artists of Lascaux demonstrated such meticulous knowledge of animal anatomy, from the curve of a horse's neck to the shaggy detail of a bison's coat, that a major error on such a central figure seems unlikely. This leads us into more speculative and far more fascinating territory. Could the unicorn be a depiction of a mythical creature, a composite of traits from several animals meant to embody strength or some other abstract quality? Its beard might suggest a goat, its robust build a bison, its straight horns something else entirely. Or could it be a cultural memory passed down through generations in story and song, of a real animal that had vanished from the region long before the paint ever touched the wall? Some researchers have looked to the vast grasslands of Eurasia and pondered the Elasmotherium, a gigantic rhinoceros with a single enormous horn, often called the Siberian unicorn, which is believed to have survived until around the same time modern humans were spreading across Europe. While the horn count is wrong, the massive size and general stature could align with a folk memory distorted by time and retelling. The true power of the unicorn is not in providing an answer, but in framing a fundamental question about how we interpret ancient art. When is a painting a portrait, and when is it a symbol? When is it a field guide, and when is it a page from a book of legends? This creature, standing so confidently among its identifiable neighbors, forces us to admit that the artist's world was populated by more than just the animals they hunted. It was a world where the line between the real and the imagined, the present and the ancestral past, was porous. And if such a being could exist in the heart of Europe's most famous cave gallery, what other unknown creatures might be waiting in more remote corners of the globe, where the artist's inspirations were drawn from entirely different landscapes and myths? This question pulls our gaze away from the celebrated caves of France and toward a continent whose ancient art presents a parallel universe of cryptic beings. The line between a remembered animal and a purely invented form grows even more blurred within the cave of La Pasiega in Spain. Here, amidst a crowded canvas of horses, deer, and ibex painted over millennia, one figure consistently draws the eye for its utter strangeness. It is a long, sinuous body drawn with a flowing, almost calligraphic line, but its most striking feature is a series of elegant, backward curving projections that run along its entire spine, like a row of horns or delicate spines. This is the so-called horned serpent of La Pasiega, a creature that feels both organic and utterly alien. It does not match any reptile native to the Iberian Peninsula, nor does it correspond to any clear mythological serpent from later cultures in the region. Its very essence is ambiguity. Some archaeologists look at the graceful curves and suggest this might be an incredibly abstracted or stylized depiction of an aurochs, the wild ancestor of modern cattle, with its horns and backbone merged into a single, flowing design. Others see it as something born purely from the imagination, a composite creature meant to embody a concept rather than copy a living thing. Could those spines represent rolling hills, mapping a sacred landscape onto the creature's form? Might the undulating body symbolize a river, its horns mimicking the branching tributaries that give life to the land? Or perhaps it is an early attempt to capture the terrifying, branching flash of lightning, giving a tangible form to a powerful natural force. This painting is a masterclass in symbolic thinking. It shows us that Paleolithic artists were not just illustrators, they were conceptual thinkers who freely blended geometric patterns with realistic forms to create a new visual language. The horned serpent exists in that fascinating space between observation and invention, a being that feels real because of its confident line work, yet is completely unreal in its anatomy. It whispers that the unknown creatures in these caves are not always monsters or gods. Sometimes they are elegant puzzles, ideas given flesh and horn on a stone wall. This serpentine mystery is not alone. Across the world, in caves separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, the motif of the reptilian or chimeric being reappears, suggesting a deep, perhaps primal, human fascination with these forms. To witness one of the most dramatic examples, we must journey from the caves of Europe to an entirely different continent, where the art is younger but the mysteries are just as profound. The journey from European caves to the humid tropics of Indonesia reveals a startling parallel. On the island of Sulawesi, within limestone caves adorned with hand stencils, archaeologists uncovered a panel that shattered long-held assumptions. It is a sprawling, dynamic hunting scene, a narrative frozen in time for at least 44,000 years. That makes it the oldest known figurative storytelling in the entire human record. The scene shows wild pigs and dwarf buffaloes, animals familiar to the artist's world, but the hunters themselves are utterly unfamiliar. They are small, humanoid figures, yet they possess the tails, snouts, and other distinct features of animals. These are the Therianthropes, beings that are part human and part creature, captured in mid-action as if leaping across the rock face. Their exact nature is a captivating puzzle. Are we looking at hunters wearing elaborate ritual costumes of hides and masks, transforming themselves to channel the power of their prey? Or are these depictions of supernatural entities, mythical ancestors from the dream time who took hybrid forms, actively guiding the hunt from the spirit world? The very existence of this scene is revolutionary. For decades, the sophisticated cave art of Europe was seen as a unique, almost miraculous flowering of the human mind. The Sulawesi panel proves that the capacity for complex narrative, for weaving together observation and imagination into a coherent story, emerged simultaneously on opposite sides of the globe. This was not a cultural invention that spread slowly from one point of origin. It was a fundamental capability of the modern human mind, a shared cognitive toolkit that included myth-making and the conceptual blending of different forms of life. The Sulawesi Therianthropes provide a crucial, non-European perspective, shouting that the impulse to depict the unknown, to give form to the beings that lived in stories and ceremonies, was a universal human phenomenon. It tells us that 44,000 years ago, people were not just painting what they saw, they were painting what they believed, weaving the real and the imagined into a single, powerful story about their place in the world. This global thread of hybrid beings suggests a profound, shared human intuition that the boundaries of identity were fluid, and that power often resided in the space between species. As we follow this thread, we find it leads not only across continents, but into realms of pure, mesmerizing abstraction. But the artists of the Paleolithic did not only blend human and animal, they sometimes granted the animal kingdom impossible attributes of its own. Deep within the Chauvet Pont d'Arc cave in France, a site so ancient and pristine it feels like a cathedral frozen in time, a different kind of mystery takes shape on the limestone. Here, around 36,000 years ago, artists of astonishing skill created a gallery of motion and shadow, capturing lions, rhinos, and horses with a dynamism that feels alive even today. Among these masterworks of observation, one figure stands apart. It is a powerful, four-legged creature, its body robust like a bison or a wild ox, its stance grounded and heavy. Yet from its shoulders, two elegant, sweeping lines arc backwards, unmistakably reminiscent of wings. This is the winged beast of Chauvet, a creature that belongs to no known field guide of the Ice Age. The immediate, practical mind searches for a rational explanation. Could it be a stylistic flourish, a decorative element added for emphasis? Perhaps those lines represent something else entirely, like a flowing mane or a symbolic cloak. Yet the clarity of the surrounding art makes this difficult to accept. The artists of Chauvet demonstrated a profound understanding of animal anatomy, rendering muscle tension and movement with a sophistication that would not be matched for millennia. This was not a community of beginners making errors. The wings were deliberate, an intentional addition to a familiar form. So what were they trying to communicate? One compelling interpretation is that we are seeing a symbol, not a species. The wings could be a visual metaphor for the creature's power, its spirit, or its speed, a way of saying this animal possesses an essence that transcends its physical body. In a world where every hunt was a matter of survival and reverence, depicting a bison with wings might have been a way to honor its formidable nature, to acknowledge the vital force that left the herd when the animal passed. Another possibility pulls us back into the realm of shamanic experience. Could this be an image from a vision or a trance state, where the boundaries of reality dissolved and a terrestrial beast was perceived with the attributes of a celestial one? Or perhaps most tantalizingly, could it be a fragment of cultural memory? Is it conceivable that stories persisted for generations about a great, strange beast from a distant land, a description passed down and eventually painted by artists who had never seen it themselves, blending the familiar with the fantastic? The winged beast is a quiet revolution in stone. It tells us that even the most realistic artists of the deep past felt no obligation to be bound by realism alone. Their art served a higher purpose than mere documentation. It was a language for expressing concepts that had no other form, for giving shape to qualities like power, spirit, and the mysterious connection between the earth and the sky. This single, anomalous painting opens a window into a symbolic universe of immense depth, a universe where the animals they depended upon could also be vessels for the sacred. And if a bison could be given wings in France, what other earthly forms might have been transformed by the human imagination in other ancient sanctuaries? This question leads us to a site where the art itself seems to pulse with a different kind of energy, where the unknown creatures are not just painted on the walls, but are born from the very shape of the rock itself. The vibrant, almost breathing bison of Altamira rightfully claim the spotlight. Their rich red and black forms a testament to artistic genius. Yet in the quieter corners of this Spanish marvel, a fainter, more cryptic figure waits. It is a creature with the slender, graceful body of a deer, poised as if ready to spring, but its head is all wrong. It is not the long, gentle face of a deer, but something shorter, more compact, with a suggestion of a snout that hints at a canine or perhaps a feline. This is a deliberate hybrid, a composite being stitched together from the familiar parts of two different animals. What makes this painting so intriguing is not just its form, but its context. It is rendered in a different pigment and a distinct, less fluid style than the celebrated bison nearby. This subtle detail is a whisper from the depths of time, suggesting this image may belong to a different era entirely, painted by a later hand that entered this sacred space generations or even centuries after the first masterworks were completed. This raises a profound question about the life of a cave as a cultural site. Was this later artist paying homage to the older tradition, adding a new chapter to an ongoing story told on stone? Or were they perhaps reinterpreting the space, introducing a new myth or a local legend into a gallery of ancient symbols? The composite creature of Altamira forces us to see these caves not as static time capsules, but as living archives used and reused across millennia. Each generation may have brought its own stories, its own understanding of the world, and left its own mark alongside or even over the marks of their ancestors. This faint painting is a powerful reminder that the most famous images can sometimes overshadow the deepest mysteries. It encourages us to look past the obvious masterpieces, to search the shadows and the faded edges for clues about the long, layered conversation between humans and the hidden places of the earth. This idea of a conversation across time becomes even more vivid when we encounter art that seems to speak a completely different visual language, one composed not of animals, but of signs that feel like a code waiting to be broken. Tucked away from the celebrated gallery of spotted horses in the Pech Merle cave, a solitary figure stands as a testament to an artist's unique vision. This is the long-necked Enigma, a creature that seems to have wandered in from a different world entirely. Its body is stout and solid, like that of a wild ox, but it is carried upon impossibly slender, elongated legs. Most striking of all is its neck, a graceful, arching column that culminates in a tiny, almost delicate head. It looks nothing like the horses, mammoths, or bison that populate the rest of Ice Age European art. The playful label of a prehistoric giraffe quickly falls apart, as those animals had vanished from the continent long before the first human artist mixed pigments in this cave. So what were they looking at? One school of thought suggests this is not an animal at all, but a profoundly abstracted human form. The stout body could represent the torso. The long neck and small head might symbolize a raised arm or a ritual staff topped with a symbolic marker. In this reading, the painting becomes a figure in motion, a dancer or a shaman captured in a minimalist style that focuses on essence over anatomy. Another theory proposes it is a spirit animal, a guardian entity that never walked the earth, its form designed to convey qualities like vigilance, grace, or a connection between the grounded body and the elevated mind. Perhaps most fascinating is the possibility of a story from afar. Could this be the rendering of a description, passed from person to person over generations, of a creature that lived in lands far to the south? Oral traditions are incredibly durable, capable of carrying the memory of animals across vast distances and centuries. A traveler's tale of a long-necked beast from the African savanna, filtered through countless retellings and the artist's own cultural lens, might have resulted in this singular, haunting image. Its isolation on the wall makes it feel like a private notation, a personal vision or a record of a tale that held special meaning for the painter. This enigma demonstrates that the cave artist's palette was not limited to local wildlife or even local mythology. Their minds and the stories they told could traverse landscapes they had never physically seen, giving form to the whispers of a wider, more mysterious world. It is a powerful reminder that these caves were not just galleries of the familiar, but also libraries for the fantastic, where the only limit was the breadth of human imagination and the reach of human conversation. The artist's line in the Cognac cave is confident, yet the figure it creates is a riddle. Among the clear, graceful forms of ibex and the looming shapes of mammoths, a starkly different image holds its ground. It is a simple, linear body topped with a round head, and from that head, a series of short, straight lines radiate outward like spikes of light or the spines of a fish. This is the so-called Fishman of Cognac, a being that feels both human and utterly other. The nickname is evocative, but it may also be a modern cage for an ancient idea. Those radiating lines could indeed be fins, suggesting a spirit of the water. They might also represent a ceremonial headdress made of feathers or reeds, or perhaps something more abstract, like rays of energy or a symbolic crown. This ambiguity is the very heart of its mystery. Unlike the meticulously observed animals that share its wall, the Fishman is schematic, reduced to its essential elements. This is a consistent pattern across Paleolithic art. Humanoid figures are almost always more abstract, more symbolic than the creatures portrayed around them. It is as if depicting a person in full, realistic detail was taboo or perhaps unnecessary. The essence was what mattered, not the individual. the Fishman is not alone on its panel. It is surrounded by geometric signs, clusters of dots and lines and shapes that recur in caves across Europe. These signs are a persistent, unsolved cipher in the language of cave art. Some researchers see them as maps, ritual notations, or symbols for concepts we can no longer grasp. Their presence alongside this hybrid figure suggests a connection, as if the Fishman is being labeled or placed within a specific category of meaning. So what category might that be? For a community living inland, far from the coast, why depict a being so strongly associated with water? One possibility points to spiritual geography. Rivers, springs, and underground water sources were lifelines and often seen as portals to other realms. A Fishman could be a guardian spirit of such a place, a deity of life-giving waters. Alternatively, it might represent an ancestor or a cultural hero credited with introducing fishing knowledge, a vital skill even for inland groups. Or we could be looking at the record of a specific ritual where a participant wore a costume crafted from aquatic resources, perhaps nets, fish bones, and reeds, to enact a ceremony ensuring a good catch or honoring the river's bounty. The Fishman of Cogul, in its beautiful simplicity, pulls our attention away from the grand hunt and toward a different, equally vital relationship, the human connection to water. It whispers that the cosmology of these early people was not limited to the grasslands and herds they traversed. It also flowed with the rivers and dwelled in the deep, quiet pools, populated by spirits as enigmatic as the one painted on this cave wall. This focus on a more intimate, elemental relationship with nature finds a startling parallel in another form of ancient expression, one that moves from the walls of caves to the very tools held in the hand. Far to the east, where the Ural Mountains divide continents, another cave holds echoes of this ancient symbolic language. Deep within Kapova cave, amidst paintings of mammoths and horses that feel familiar to a European eye, a very different figure emerges from the stone. It is a large, imposing beast, but its most defining feature is a chaotic cluster at its head. From a central point, several distinct, rounded forms seem to branch outward, creating the unmistakable impression of multiple heads, or perhaps a single head crowned with a bizarre, branching array of horns or antlers. The painting's age and condition make a definitive count difficult, adding to its aura of deliberate mystery. This is not a graceful hybrid or a spirit animal. It is something that feels monstrous, a creature of power and perhaps of warning. Its very presence in the Urals, thousands of miles from the caves of France and Spain, is a revelation. It shatters the old notion that sophisticated Paleolithic art was a purely Western European phenomenon. Here at the eastern edge of Europe, people were engaging in the same profound practice, painting not just their prey, but their nightmares and their myths. The multi-headed beast of Kapova feels like a direct ancestor to the dragons and giants that would later stalk the folklore of Eurasia, from the multi-headed Zime of Slavic tales to the Lernaean Hydra of Greek legend. This painting suggests that the archetype of the monstrous, multi-headed guardian is not an invention of classical antiquity or the medieval mind, but a story seed planted in the human imagination during the Ice Age and nurtured across hundreds of generations through oral tradition. It is a stunning thread of continuity, a visual proof that some of our deepest mythological fears and fascinations have roots extending back over 10,000 years. The Kapova beast expands our map in every sense, showing that the human need to give form to the terrifying and the unknown was a pan-continental impulse, a shared project of the mind that connected communities across vast and empty landscapes. This realization pulls our gaze even further, to a land where isolation created a gallery of beings unlike any other on Earth. The sun-bleached sands of the Sahara hold a gallery of a different kind. Far from the damp, enclosed caves of Europe, the open-air rock shelters of Tassili and Najer in Algeria preserve a sprawling chronicle of human life painted across millennia. Here, under a vast and relentless sky, artists from the distant past left thousands of images that tell a story of changing climates, migrating herds, and evolving beliefs. Among the oldest of these works, from a time known as the Roundhead period, the human form itself becomes the canvas for mystery. These figures are often large, dominant presences on the rock face, yet their most defining feature is a profound absence of detail. Their heads are perfect, featureless circles, smooth orbs that offer no eyes, no mouth, no hint of individual identity. They are beings of pure form, and sometimes that form transcends the human entirely. One such figure stands apart, its round head not merely blank but transformed. Encircling or perhaps replacing the head is a distinct, graceful crescent, like a sliver of moon cradling the space where a face should be. To the modern eye, it instantly reads as a lunar symbol, a being wearing the night sky as its crown. In a landscape defined by the sun's harsh rule, the moon's cool, cyclical light would have been a vital counterpoint, governing tides of time, marking seasons, and illuminating the desert in a silver glow. This lunar being could be a depiction of a deity, a celestial power personified and given a place of honor on the sacred rock. It might represent an ancestral spirit believed to have descended from the heavens, a guide from the cosmos. Or perhaps it captures a spiritual practitioner in a moment of profound transformation, a shaman who, through ritual, had taken on the essence and power of the moon itself. The painting is a masterful fusion of observation and cosmology. It shows us that the unknown creatures of the ancient world were not always beasts of the earth. They could be humanoid forms intimately connected to the celestial dance above, a reminder that early people saw their myths and their lives written as clearly in the stars as they did in the tracks of animals. This Saharan gallery, painted under an open sky, expands our definition of sacred space. It tells us that the impulse to depict the mysterious and the divine did not require a cavern's depth. It could flourish anywhere the human spirit sought to make its mark and understand its place within an immense and awe-inspiring universe. This cosmic perspective, born under the desert stars, finds a startling echo on an isolated island chain, where artists painted beings that seemed to gaze not upward, but inward, into a vibrant and spiritual world of their own. While the Saharan artists looked to the heavens, a different kind of ethereal mystery was being painted in the deep forests of central India. The Bhimbetka rock shelters are not caves, but vast, overhanging sandstone cliffs that have provided a canvas for over 10,000 years of continuous human expression. Declared a World Heritage Site, this sprawling gallery holds layer upon layer of art, a visual history book where one era's paintings fade gently beneath the strokes of the next. It is within the oldest, most weathered layers that we find some of the most haunting images of all. Painted in a stark white pigment, now faded to the faintest whisper on the rock, are ghostly zoomorphic figures. These are not the robust, confident animals of Lascaux or Altamira. They are spectral outlines, creatures that seem halfway between this world and another. Their forms are familiar yet profoundly altered. Some possess exaggerated, elongated limbs that stretch into impossible proportions. Others are captured with multiple legs, frozen in a blur of motion, as if the artist was trying to paint speed itself, or the afterimage of a creature in flight. A few are twisted into poses no living animal could hold, contorted as if caught in a dream. Their very substance adds to the enigma, the white pigment giving them a luminous, insubstantial quality against the dark red rock, like apparitions materializing at dawn. What do these pale, impossible beings represent? One compelling interpretation is that they are not animals at all, but depictions of animal spirits or souls. In this view, the exaggerated features and extra limbs are not mistakes, but intentional symbols of a creature's vital force, its power and essence separate from its physical body. The white color could signify this otherworldly nature, a visual code distinguishing the spirit from the flesh and blood quarry of the hunt. Another possibility draws a direct line to altered states of consciousness. The contorted poses and multiplied limbs are classic hallmarks of entoptic phenomena, the geometric patterns and visual distortions experienced in trance states, deep meditation, or during visionary rituals. Perhaps these are not portraits of external beings, but maps of internal journeys, a shaman's visual record of the transforming creatures he encountered in a spiritual realm. Bhimbetka's incredible timeline offers a unique perspective. We can see, in one place, how the human approach to depicting the unknown evolved. These early, ghostly white figures give way over millennia to more solid, colorful, and narrative scenes of hunting and community life. The mystery does not disappear, but it changes form. This long-term view suggests that the earliest artists here may have been most concerned with capturing the intangible, the spiritual underpinnings of the world, before later generations focused more on chronicling their tangible interactions with it. These faint white outlines are therefore a crucial bridge, a glimpse into a very ancient mindset where the line between a living creature and its eternal essence was as thin and luminous as the paint on the stone. Across the Atlantic, in the sun-scorched canyons of northeastern Brazil, a different serpent slithers across the rock. Serra do Capivara National Park is an open-air archive of staggering antiquity, holding some of the oldest traces of human presence in the entire Americas. Here, among vivid scenes of hunters and ancient wildlife, a singular figure captures the imagination. It is a long, fluid, serpentine body painted with a sinuous grace. Yet this is no ordinary snake. Along its underside, a series of small, stubby legs protrude, and it is crowned with a distinct head featuring large, prominent eyes. This serpentine hybrid feels instantly familiar, like a creature pulled from a global storybook of dragons and mythical amphibians. Its very existence in this remote landscape is a question painted in ochre. Given the incredible age suggested for the site, potentially exceeding 25,000 years, this image becomes more than just a curious local legend. It transforms into a profound piece of a much larger puzzle concerning the very first chapters of human history in the New World. The painting ignites a compelling debate. Could this be evidence of a deep cultural memory carried across the Bering Land Bridge by the earliest migrants? Is it possible that the archetype of a great, legless or legged serpent, a being found in mythologies from the Amazon to Australia, from Mesoamerica to Mesopotamia, was not invented independently everywhere, but was a story seed that traveled with those first pioneering groups, adapting to new landscapes but retaining its essential, coiled form? Alternatively, the image could represent a brilliant example of convergent imagination. Faced with the very real and formidable serpents of the Brazilian Caatinga, and perhaps drawing upon a near-universal human fascination with creatures that move without limbs, the artists of Serra do Capivara may have simply given shape to a local spirit of the earth, a guardian of waterholes or a powerful entity of the underworld. The small legs might then be a symbolic addition, granting this earth-bound creature a connection to the terrestrial realm of other animals, blurring the categories of reptile and mammal to create something endowed with the powers of both. What makes this painting a cornerstone of our global survey is its powerful testimony to transmission. Whether it represents an inherited idea or a parallel invention, it demonstrates the human mind's relentless drive to generate complex imaginary beings and to transmit those visions, either across generations through oral tradition or across continents with migrating populations. This serpent, frozen on a Brazilian cliff face, is a direct challenge to the idea that ancient cultures were isolated. It suggests a continuity of thought, a shared library of mythical forms that may have circled the globe long before the first ship or caravan was ever built. It stands as a vibrant, painted whisper from a time beyond memory, reminding us that the stories we tell about monsters and guardians are perhaps among our oldest and most enduring possessions. The journey from the Brazilian Serpent leads us to a canyon where the very rock seems to hold 1,000 echoes of human presence. In the remote Patagonian steppe of Argentina, Cueva de los Manos, the Cave of the Hands, is a sanctuary of touch across time. Its walls are covered in a stunning array of stenciled handprints, negative silhouettes in red, white, and black that feel like direct greetings from the distant past. Alongside these intimate signatures are vibrant, dynamic paintings of the animals that sustained life here, particularly herds of graceful guanacos rendered with a keen observer's eye for movement and form. Yet, scattered among these tangible records of hands and prey are figures of an entirely different nature. These are schematic, elongated humanoids, their bodies simplified into flowing lines, their heads mere dots or simple shapes. They do not stand firmly on the ground like the guanacos. They appear to float or dance across the rock face, suspended in space with an ethereal lightness. The contrast in artistic approach is deliberate and profound. The animals are painted with a focus on naturalistic detail, capturing the curve of a neck, the stance of a leg, the essence of a living creature from the physical world. The floating entities, however, belong to the realm of symbol. Their abstract form suggests they were never meant to be portraits of individuals, but representations of a concept or a state of being. What do these weightless figures signify? In the cosmology of the hunter-gatherers who created this gallery, they could very well represent the spirits of ancestors, watching over the living and the herds from a non-corporeal plane. They might depict participants in a trance dance or ritual, their simplified forms capturing the moment their essence was believed to leave the body and travel. Some researchers see them as mythological beings, characters from creation stories who moved between the earth and the sky. Their floating posture is the key. It visually removes them from the ordinary laws of the tangible world that so clearly govern the painted guanacos. This duality is not a contradiction. It is a complete picture of a worldview. The artists of Cueva de los Manos were masterfully documenting two parallel realities: the physical environment they navigated for survival and the spiritual landscape they navigated for meaning. The unknown creatures we find in caves across the world most often reside in this second, symbolic category. They are not failed attempts at realism. They are successful attempts to give form to the formless, to forces, concepts, or beings that existed beyond everyday sight but were central to everyday understanding. The floating entities of Patagonia are a beautiful and clear example of this ancient language in action, a language where a simple, flowing line could speak volumes about the invisible dimensions of life. The floating figures of Patagonia demonstrate a world where the spiritual was given form through elegant abstraction, and this same impulse finds a different, more radiant expression high in the Italian Alps. The Valley of Valcamonica is an immense outdoor gallery, its smooth glacier-polished rocks covered with hundreds of thousands of carvings or petroglyphs etched over 8,000 years. While the famous Communion Rose, a later Iron Age symbol, often captures attention, the valley's earlier artists left behind a more enigmatic legacy. Among the countless scenes of dueling warriors, plowing oxen, and geometric labyrinths stand singular humanoid figures that seem to glow from within the stone. These are not merely outlines of people. Surrounding their heads and bodies are precise, deeply carved lines that radiate outward like beams of light, creating a permanent sunburst or halo effect. They are beings of pure, emanating energy. Their specific identity is a beautiful mystery. Given their radiant aura, one of the most compelling interpretations is that they represent solar deities. In a mountain valley where the sun's journey across the sky dictated the rhythms of seasons, its warmth a vital force for life and agriculture, personifying this power as a radiant being would be a natural act of reverence. Yet they might not be gods in a distant, untouchable sense. They could also be cultural heroes or venerated ancestors, individuals whose deeds or wisdom were so monumental that they were remembered not as ordinary people, but as luminous figures, their influence visualized as a permanent light shining from their form. Another possibility connects them to shamanic or visionary experience. The radiating lines could depict an individual perceived as possessing immense spiritual power, a person whose very presence was felt as a kind of palpable energy or magnetic force. What makes these figures so significant in our global survey is their method of depicting the supernatural. They take an abstract, intangible concept, divine power, heroic essence, spiritual energy, and give it a concrete, visual language, the ray of light. This is not a trait of a hybrid animal, but a quality of being made visible. This motif of radiance is a global whisper. We see it in the halos of saints millennia later, in the sun disks of ancient Egypt, and in descriptions of enlightened beings across countless traditions. The Valcamonica carvers tapped into this fundamental human intuition that the truly extraordinary could be represented as a human form that literally shines. Their work shows us that the unknown beings of the ancient world were not always strange beasts. Sometimes the most profound mystery wore a human shape, illuminated from within by a force the artists could feel but not see, a force they made eternal with the patient strike of a stone against stone. This human-centered mystery leads us to consider a place where the artists did not just carve into rock, but built entire structures to frame their visions, creating sanctuaries where the line between architecture and sacred art completely dissolved. The radiant figures of Valcamonica show us a world where power was drawn from the sky, but another cave far to the east holds a creature whose power seems drawn from the very earth itself. In the heart of central India, within the shelter of Barabahu, a single monumental painting dominates the rock face. It is a massive quadruped, a beast of immense, rounded bulk that seems to carry the weight of the world on its broad back. Its head is curiously small in proportion, a mere suggestion atop a form built for endurance, and running along its spine is a distinct series of humps, like rolling hills made flesh. This is the Beast of Barabahu, an image that feels both powerfully real and utterly elusive. The immediate challenge is one of simple identification. What animal could this possibly be? The local fauna of historic India offers no perfect match. An elephant lacks the pronounced spinal humps and possesses a distinctly different head shape. A rhinoceros has the wrong body profile entirely. The creature seems to stand outside the known bestiary of the region, a ghost from a different ecological age. This leads researchers down a fascinating and speculative path. One compelling theory suggests we might be looking at a cultural memory, a story made visual. During the last glacial period, when climates were colder and grasslands expanded, it is possible that the range of the woolly mammoth extended southward into parts of Asia. Could the artists of Barabahu, living millennia later, have been painting a description passed down through countless generations? The rounded body, the small head, and especially the distinctive humped back, which could correspond to the mammoth's high shoulder and fat deposits, align intriguingly with this idea. The painting would then be a stunning example of oral tradition, preserving a paleontological truth long after the animal itself had vanished from the land. Yet there is another, equally valid interpretation. Perhaps this is not a record of a lost animal, but the birth of a legendary one. The beast's formidable, almost mountainous form, crowned with those mysterious humps, bears a striking resemblance to descriptions of dragons or great earth spirits from later Indian folklore. Could this be an early visualization of a mythical guardian, a creature born not from observation but from the collective imagination to embody concepts of strength, stability, or the untamed wilderness? This single painting masterfully illustrates the core dilemma we face with so many of these ancient images. When does a stylistic choice, like exaggerating the humps for symbolic emphasis, stop being style and start being a clue to a forgotten reality? The Beast of Bhimbetka refuses to answer, and that is its gift. It forces us to hold two possibilities in balance: the memory of a real, lost giant and the invention of a symbolic, enduring one. It shows us that for ancient artists, the line between documenting the past and inventing the mythic was not a wall, but a wide and fertile plain where stories took root and grew into forms we are still trying to name. The circular guardian of Gobestan offers no easy answers. Carved into the rocky plateau of Azerbaijan thousands of years ago, this petroglyph stands among a vast outdoor museum of human history, where images of reed boats and hunting parties tell a clear story of daily life on the shores of the ancient Caspian Sea. Yet this particular figure speaks a different language entirely. It is a large, roughly circular form, its interior marked with a pattern of lines or dots, and from its edges, several short, straight lines protrude like stubby limbs or rays of energy. To a modern eye, it might suggest a turtle seen from above, a strange insect, or a stylized sun. This very flexibility is the point. Without the cultural key held by the artists, we are left to project our own interpretations onto the stone, engaging in a kind of prehistoric Rorschach test. Some researchers propose it represents a guardian spirit of the place, a protective entity whose abstract form was meant to convey a presence or a power rather than a physical appearance. Others see it as a clan symbol, a totemic design that identified a group of people with a particular concept or a mythical ancestor, much like a family crest whose original story has faded. This abstract guardian is a crucial reminder in our global survey. Not all the unknown creatures we encounter in ancient art were meant to be literal portraits of beings, real or imagined. Some were pure symbols functioning as talismans, territorial markers, or sacred emblems. Their power resided not in their recognizability, but in their agreed-upon meaning within a community. When that community and its oral traditions pass into history, the symbol remains, a locked door for which we have lost the key. Gobestan's enigmatic circle teaches us humility. It shows that the deepest mystery sometimes lies not in a composite beast with clear animal parts, but in a simple, patterned shape whose significance was once as vital and understood as the image of a hunting prey. This journey from the literal to the purely symbolic marks a profound shift in how we must view these ancient galleries, preparing us for places where the art itself seems to dissolve into a sacred geometry, a code written not for the eye but for the spirit. These abstract guardians of Gobestan mark a boundary where art becomes pure symbol, but halfway across the world, another rock shelter pulses with a different kind of energy, one of movement and myth. In the ancient, sun-drenched landscape of Kakadu National Park in Australia's Arnhem Land, the rock art tells a story that is not frozen but forever in motion. Here, artists working thousands of years ago created what scholars call the dynamic figure style, and these images are a world away from the static profiles of European caves. The figures are humanoid, but they are captured in mid-action, their bodies bent and stretched in dynamic, almost dance-like poses. They are hunters with spears at the ready, figures engaged in ritual, their limbs flowing with a rhythmic energy that feels immediate and alive. Their mystery, however, often rests upon their heads. Many are adorned with elaborate, towering headdresses, intricate assemblages of lines and forms that sometimes clearly incorporate animal features, feathers, or other elements from the natural world. These are not portraits of everyday people. They are depictions of beings from the dream time, the foundational era in Aboriginal cosmology when ancestral spirits shaped the land, created its laws, and became part of its very substance. To the cultures that created them, these dynamic figures are not unknown at all. They are absolutely real. They are the tangible presence of the ancestors and creation spirits who continue to inhabit and govern the landscape. Their enigmatic quality to outsiders stems from a profound cultural context that is not fully shared, a vast and intricate knowledge system passed down through song, ceremony, and story for over 65,000 years. The dancing hybrids of Kakadu exemplify a crucial truth we have seen across the globe, that cave and rock art served as the primary repository for mythological knowledge long before the written word. These paintings were not mere decoration, they were a visual library, a sacred interface where the community could interact with the beings that defined their world, their laws, and their identity. The figures, with their animal-infused headdresses and dynamic stances, visually declare that the human and the animal, the ancestor and the living, the spiritual and the physical, are not separate realms, but are woven together in a continuous, vibrating tapestry of life and law. This art underscores a connection between land, belief, and image so deep it is indivisible, where every painted figure is both a map to a sacred site and a chapter in a living story. To stand before these dancing forms is to witness a tradition where the unknown creatures of the deep past are not puzzles to be solved, but eternal relatives to be honored, their stories still told in the whisper of the wind through the sandstone and the rhythm of the dances performed in their shadow. The desert sun bleaches the rock, but the horns remain, curling in defiance of every law of nature. Across the vast expanse of the Sahara, from the Caucasus Mountains to remote shelters, artists painted the antelope and the gazelle, creatures of grace and speed. Yet they did not leave them as they were. They gave them horns that spiral into impossible, elegant labyrinths, coils that stretch far beyond the animal's own body in patterns of breathtaking complexity. This is the 19th of our 25 mysteries, the spiral-horned antelope, a being born from observation and transformed by belief. The artists knew their subject intimately, capturing the lean body and alert posture of a real desert dweller. The magic and the mystery is all in the elaboration. Those extravagant horns are not a mistake, they are a deliberate crown, a visual hymn to something greater than the animal itself. In the relentless, water-starved landscape of the Sahara, the arrival of rain was not just a weather event, it was a miracle of renewal. Some researchers propose that these magnificent creatures were not merely food sources, but were seen as rain animals, spiritual entities whose very essence was tied to the life-giving storms. The spiraling horns could symbolize the gathering clouds, the coiling paths of life giving water across the land, or the cyclical nature of the seasons themselves. By painting an antelope with horns that reached for the sky in such an elaborate dance, the artists may have been performing a form of sympathetic magic, a ritual act to draw down the fertility and abundance the animal represented. This practice of artistic exaggeration is a master key to understanding so many of the unknown creatures we have encountered. It shows us that the journey from a known animal to a mythical being could be a simple, intentional step. A bison is given wings in Chauvet. A stag's antlers are merged with a human form in Tuafrias. Here, an antelope's horns are spun into celestial patterns. In each case, a quality, power, or concept is made visible through the manipulation of a familiar form. The antelope does not become a monster, it becomes an emblem. Its exaggerated feature signals that this is no ordinary creature to be hunted, but a sacred one to be revered, a bridge between the dry, tangible world and the hoped-for, unseen world of plenty. This Saharan mystery beautifully encapsulates the thread that connects our global survey, the human capacity to look at the world, see its truths, and then, with a stroke of pigment, reach beyond them to depict the wonders they felt in their hearts. Deep within the engraved gallery of Les Combarelles, a quiet conversation is etched into the stone. This French cave is not a canvas of bold, painted color, but but a library of fine lines where hundreds upon hundreds of engraved figures, horses, reindeer, bison, cover the walls in a dense, whispering tapestry. To walk its narrow passage is to read a book written in silhouette, where every scratch of flint on limestone held meaning. And here, amid this crowded chronicle, the 20th of our mysterious creatures waits not to shout but to be carefully seen. It is an engraving of a bear, a powerful, grounded presence of the ancient forests, yet its face holds a secret. Where one expects the deep-set eyes and elongated snout of a bear, the features shift. The eyes are large, round, and forward-facing. The muzzle is shortened, hinting at the curve of a beak. This is the subtle alchemy of the owl-bear, a being where two distinct natures are fused with such delicate skill that it can easily be overlooked, mistaken for a simple bear in a forest of other images. That subtlety is the entire point. It was not meant to shock but to signify. This was a symbol for those who knew the code. In the world of the artists, the bear was a paramount symbol of terrestrial power, strength, and perhaps the regenerative force of hibernation. The owl, a silent master of the night, represented perception, wisdom, and knowledge of hidden things. To combine them was to create a layered identity, a spiritual entity or a clan totem that embodied the formidable strength of the forest king with the penetrating insight of the nocturnal watcher. This finely blended creature reveals a symbolic language of immense sophistication. It shows us that these artists were not just making animal portraits or inventing monsters, they were engaged in a nuanced form of conceptual blending. They could take the essential qualities of two beings and merge them into a new composite meaning, much like combining words to form a more complex idea. The owl-bear might have represented a specific guardian spirit of a particular place, a cave or a forest grove that was powerful by day and mysteriously watchful by night. Or it could have been the emblem of a family line, claiming descent from or protection by a being that possessed both physical might and ancestral wisdom. Its placement among hundreds of other engravings suggests it was part of a larger symbolic ecosystem, a single term in a vast visual vocabulary that we can now only partially decipher. The quiet power of the owl-bear challenges us to look closer, to understand that the most profound mysteries in these ancient galleries are often not the loudest or the largest. They are the subtle integrations, the gentle suggestions that the natural world was a web of interconnected essences, and that the human mind excelled at mapping those spiritual connections onto the walls of the earth. The steppes of Kazakhstan hold a gallery carved not in shadow but in open sunlight. At the petroglyph site of Tamgali, a sacred valley used for millennia, the rock faces are inscribed with a clear visual language of the Bronze Age. Here, sun gods radiate their power, warriors stand in proud procession, and herds of horses and bulls speak of a life tied to the land. Yet nestled among these familiar icons is a carving that feels like a visitor from a different scale of existence. It is a rounded, segmented body supported by multiple, carefully etched legs and crowned with two distinct antennae-like projections. To our modern eyes, it reads instantly as a giant insect or perhaps an arachnid, a creature magnified far beyond its natural size and placed among gods and men. The practical interpretation is that it is a highly stylized depiction of a beetle, an animal that would have been a common sight in the steppe grass. But its deliberate inclusion in this sacred tableau, its size comparable to the human figures nearby, suggests it carried a weight far greater than its physical form. In a world where every element of nature was imbued with meaning, why would a small invertebrate be elevated to such prominence? One possibility is that it represents a specific, revered creature from local lore, perhaps seen as a guardian of the earth or a symbol of regeneration, much like the scarab was in ancient Egypt. Its many legs, connecting it firmly to the ground, could symbolize stability, patience, or a deep connection to the unseen world beneath the soil. Another, more intriguing interpretation links it to shamanic practice. In many traditions, insects are seen as messengers or guides to the spirit world due to their ability to burrow into the earth, disappear, and reappear. This giant insectoid could be a depiction of a shaman's spirit helper, a powerful ally that aided in journeys beneath the surface of ordinary reality. The carving at Tamgali expands our understanding of the unknown in ancient art in a vital way. It demonstrates that the category of mysterious beings was not reserved solely for majestic mammals or hybrid humanoids. The smallest, most numerous life forms could also be lifted from the ground and transformed into subjects of profound artistic and spiritual focus. By magnifying this creature, the artists were not just drawing a bug, they were acknowledging a power, an essence that they perceived within it. This act of symbolic magnification reminds us that the ancient gaze was holistic, seeing significance in every layer of creation, from the grand solar deity in the sky to the patient, many-legged traveler on the stone at their feet. Along the sunlit cliffs of Portugal's Coa Valley, the world's oldest open-air gallery presents a different kind of mystery, one of motion and multiplicity. Here, for over 20,000 years, artists have engraved the very bedrock of the valley with thousands of figures, primarily the horses, aurochs, and goats that defined their world. The images are clear, confident, and deeply familiar, yet when you look closely at the vast herds flowing across the stone, something strange emerges. Within these congregations of perfectly recognizable animals, certain figures stand out, or rather, blur. An aurochs might be outlined with not one, but several overlapping sets of horns or legs. A horse's body could appear elongated, stretched, or merged at the edges with the form of the creature beside it. At first glance, these might look like mistakes, the slip of a tool or an artist correcting a line. But their consistent placement within dynamic herd scenes suggests something far more deliberate. These are the phantom members of the herd, and they challenge everything we assume about what an ancient artist was trying to capture. The anomaly here is not a solitary monster or a hybrid god. It is a distortion born from the perception of the group itself. One compelling interpretation is that these extra lines and merged forms are an early, brilliant attempt at visual phenomenology, an effort to depict not just a static animal, but the very experience of seeing that animal in motion. Imagine watching a herd of wild horses stampede across the valley floor. Your eye doesn't capture each individual in perfect, frozen detail. It perceives a flowing mass, a blur of overlapping limbs and shifting silhouettes. The phantom engravings, with their multiple outlines and blended bodies, could be a direct translation of that sensory experience onto stone. They are a record of perception, a way of saying, this is not how the animal is, but how it appears in the thrilling, chaotic moment of the hunt or the awe of observation. This pushes the idea of the unknown creature into fascinating new territory. Perhaps the mysterious entity being depicted is not a distorted individual beast at all, but the collective spirit of the herd. In many indigenous worldviews, a group of animals is not just a collection of individuals. It possesses its own life force, its own singular will and presence. By engraving certain figures with these fluid, overlapping features, the Coa Valley artists may have been trying to give form to that collective essence, to honor the powerful, unified entity that was the herd, which was greater than the sum of its parts. This shifts our understanding of artistic intent from portraiture to poetry. It suggests these ancient creators were as concerned with capturing feeling and phenomenon as they were with recording form. The phantom herd asks us to reconsider where the boundary of a single creature truly lies. Is it in the clean outline of one aurochs, or is it in the shimmering, interconnected energy of the 50 that move as one? In the Coa Valley, the unknown being might be the ghost in the multitude, the emergent spirit of the collective, forever engraved in the moment of its most powerful and fleeting expression. The phantom herd of the Coa Valley reveals a world where perception itself could become the subject of art, but in the rock shelters of southern Africa, transformation is depicted not as a visual blur, but as a deliberate, sacred act. The San people, whose artistic tradition spans millennia, filled the Drakensberg and other regions with vibrant, intricate scenes of life. Among these, certain figures consistently capture attention: human bodies adorned with the unmistakable heads of eland, kudu, or other powerful animals, often caught in the dynamic postures of a dance. To an outside eye, these masked entities instantly register as another gallery of hybrid creatures, mysterious beings from a distant land. Yet, within their own profound cultural context, they represent something even more remarkable: a clear window into the process of becoming other. These are not unknown monsters at all, but known community members, shamans or healers, in the midst of ritual transformation. The elaborate animal masks and heads are not permanent features, but ceremonial attire, tools for a journey. In the San worldview, a healer enters a trance state, often induced through intense, rhythmic dancing, to access a spiritual potency called En. In this altered state, they are described as becoming the animal whose essence they have invoked, most often the revered eland, to travel to the spirit world, negotiate for rain, heal the sick, or guide a hunt. The rock art is a direct record of this transcendent experience, painted by those who witnessed it or perhaps by the practitioners themselves. This provides a vital, clarifying lens through which to re-examine many of the Therianthropes we have encountered across Eurasia, from the Bird-Headed Man of Lascaux to the Sorcerer of Tuafrias. Rather than being static portraits of mythical beasts, they too may be snapshots of ritual performance, capturing the precise moment a human practitioner shed their ordinary identity to navigate a non-ordinary reality. The concept is not one of monstrous hybridity, but of purposeful, temporary crossing. The boundary between worlds was not a wall to be sealed, but a veil to be parted through ceremony, dance, and focused intention. The San paintings, supported by rich oral tradition and ethnography, give voice to a silent practice hinted at in caves across the globe. They remind us that the most profound mysteries in ancient art may not be about the creatures that were imagined to exist, but about the human capacity to temporarily cease being merely human, to wear the skin of another consciousness, and return with knowledge or power for the community. This enduring idea of ritual transformation connects the deepest past to living traditions, suggesting that the urge to step beyond the self and embody the other is a thread woven into the very fabric of the human spirit. The ritual masks of the San bring us to the very edge of representation, where a recognizable form dissolves into pure pattern. Back on the island of Sulawesi, in the cave of Ling Tedong, not far from where the Therianthropes dance in their ancient hunting scene, a different kind of being is painted on the wall. It is an animal, but only in the most generous sense of the word. Its body is not defined by flowing, organic lines that suggest muscle and sinew. Instead, it is constructed from a collection of geometric shapes, a composition of triangles, straight lines, and clusters of dots. You can see the suggestion of a head, a torso, perhaps legs, but these parts feel assembled, like a puzzle where the pieces only loosely hint at the final picture. It might be an Anoas, the dwarf buffalo native to the island, or a wild pig, abstracted to the point of near oblivion. Or it might be something else entirely, a form that never walked the earth. This geometric beast stands as a profound challenge to our entire quest to identify unknown creatures. It forces us to ask a radical question. What if some of these images were never meant to be visually deciphered as animals at all? What if, instead of being portraits, they were ideograms, a kind of ancient written word? In this view, the collection of triangles and lines was not a failed attempt at drawing a pig, but a successful, conventionalized symbol for pig, or perhaps for a specific story about a pig, a clan associated with the pig, or even an abstract concept like abundance or strength that the pig embodied. This painting represents the far end of the artistic spectrum from the photorealistic bison of Altamira. It is art moving from depiction to notation, from showing to telling in a coded language. The difference is akin to seeing a detailed illustration of a sun in a storybook versus seeing the simple circle with raised symbol on a map. Both communicate sun, but one does it through resemblance, the other through an agreed-upon sign. The tragedy and the mystery of the geometric beast is that we have lost the key to that agreement. We see the symbol, but the community that understood its precise meaning, that would look at those triangles and hear a specific name or recall a particular myth, has long since passed into silence. This single, cryptic composition expands our understanding of what cave art could be. It suggests that these sacred spaces were not just galleries of spirits and prey, but also perhaps the earliest libraries, their walls inscribed with a proto-writing system where a shape could hold a story as complex as any painted scene. The creature here is not hidden in its anatomy, but in its semantics, a being made of meaning, forever waiting for its definition to return. This final shadow is not painted in color, but drawn from the cave's own essence. Within the immense, silent galleries of Rufignac, a site famed for its majestic mammoths and charging rhinos, a far more subtle presence waits on the ceiling. It is a faint, tall outline sketched with a simple stick of manganese dioxide, the same black mineral used for other drawings, yet this figure lacks all definition. There are no eyes, no mouth, no clear hands or feet. It is a humanoid silhouette, a stain of shadow given a loose border, as if the artist traced the edge of a darkness cast by their flickering torch. Its placement among the confident, powerful animal images makes its vagueness all the more intentional. This is the shadow being, a whisper at the end of a roaring artistic symphony. Interpreting it requires us to step into a mindset where the cave was not inert, but alive with potential forms. Was this a deliberate depiction of a spirit or ancestral presence, conceived not as a solid being but as an ethereal one? In many traditions, spirits of the departed or otherworldly guides are described as shadows, vapors, or fleeting impressions, lacking the solidity of the living. This drawing could be a direct translation of that concept, a portrait of a being without physical substance. Alternatively, the artist might have been engaging with the rock surface itself, seeing a suggestive stain or a play of light and shadow that resembled a figure, and merely accentuated it with a few confirming lines. This practice, called pareidolia, where the mind perceives a familiar pattern in randomness, is a universal human trait. For an ancient artist, such a moment was not a mistake of perception, but a moment of discovery, a revelation from the stone. The shadow being, therefore, might represent a collaborative act between human imagination and the natural world, where the cave offered a hint and the artist completed the thought. This final mystery brings our journey full circle, back to that initial torch flickering in the deep dark. It suggests that the ultimate unknown creature was not always a beast of horn and feather, but sometimes simply the dark itself, given a shape and a name. It reminds us that these artists worked in a dialogue with their environment, seeing the cave wall as a membrane between worlds, where the ghosts of the rock could be coaxed into view with a stick of black mineral and a profound act of attention. In this faintest of drawings, we see the most profound idea of all, that the boundary between creation and discovery, between painting a being and revealing one that was already there, was beautifully, intentionally thin. These 25 images are not a scattered collection of oddities. When we step back and view them as a whole, clear and powerful patterns rise from the stone, revealing the architecture of an ancient mind. The first and most striking pattern is the relentless drive to hybridize. From the stagman of Tuafrias to the bird-headed figure in Lascaux, from the Fishman of Cogul to the Therianthropes of Sulawesi, the blending of forms is a global constant. This is far more than artistic whimsy. It points to a fundamental cognitive process, the human ability to take known categories, break them apart, and recombine them into something new. This act of conceptual blending is the very engine of myth-making. It is how you build a metaphor, how you give tangible form to an abstract idea like wisdom, speed, or spiritual power. By fusing a human with an owl, you create a being that embodies both intelligence and otherworldly vision. By giving a bison wings, you visualize its transcendent spirit. These hybrids were likely not considered monsters, but rather more complete expressions of the qualities the artists saw fragmented in the world around them. A second, quieter pattern provides crucial context. These mysterious beings almost never appear alone. They are painted alongside and often surrounded by perfectly recognizable, naturalistic animals. The Unicorn of Lascaux stands among clear horses and aurochs. The horned serpent of La Pasiega shares its wall with ibex and deer. This consistent juxtaposition tells us these unknown creatures were not seen as invaders from a separate reality. They were understood as inhabitants of the same symbolic ecosystem. They occupied a parallel realm that existed alongside the tangible world of the hunt, a realm of spirits, ancestors, and forces that influenced the fate of the herds and the people who depended on them. The art presents a complete cosmology with one foot in the observable and the other in the conceivable. Where these images are placed speaks volumes. A third pattern emerges from the geography of the caves themselves. These figures are frequently found in the deepest, most inaccessible chambers, or in special, secluded panels set apart from the main galleries. Reaching them required intention, often a difficult crawl through narrow passages in utter darkness, guided only by flickering torchlight. This was not casual graffiti. The location itself suggests the act of creation, and likely the act of viewing was ritualized. These spaces may have been used for initiation ceremonies, where the hidden knowledge of the community, its stories and spiritual truths were revealed to new members. The cave became a theater, and the paintings were the sacred props in a performance that connected the living with the mythic past. The journey into the earth mirrored a journey into the self, or into the realm of the ancestors. Perhaps the most profound pattern of all is one of astonishing recurrence across vast distances. We find bird-human hybrids in France and in Indonesia. We find serpentine beings with impossible attributes in Spain and Brazil. We find radiant, haloed figures in Italy and featureless, floating entities in Argentina. These are not identical images, but they are resonant themes echoing like variations on a deep human melody. How do we explain this? Two compelling possibilities present themselves. The first is psychological, that these forms arise from shared archetypes in the human psyche, perhaps born from common dreams, trance states, or fundamental ways of processing fear and awe. The second is historical, suggesting that some of these core mythological ideas are incredibly ancient, originating with the earliest human migrations and slowly diffusing across the world, changing with each new landscape but retaining their essential shape. In truth, it is likely a combination of both, a testament to the universal human need to story our world with a familiar, yet endlessly inventive cast of characters. These patterns do not solve the individual mysteries of each painting. We still cannot name the beast on the wall, but they provide something more valuable, a framework for understanding. They show us that these images were not random anomalies or the doodles of bored hunters. They were deliberate, sophisticated, and integral to the fabric of early human culture. They were a language without words, a system of thought painted in ochre and engraved in stone. By recognizing the patterns, we stop asking what they are and begin to understand what they meant. They were maps to a world where everything was connected, where the animal, the human, and the spirit were in constant conversation, and where the greatest power lay in the beautiful, unknown space between them. Our journey ends not with a solved puzzle, but with a deeper appreciation for the questions themselves. From the Sorcerer of Tuafrias to the phantom herds of the Cueva Valley, these 25 images form a global chorus of human curiosity. We have crossed continents and millennia, standing before paintings that refuse to be catalogued, creatures that defy our modern categories. They are not failures of observation, but triumphs of imagination. Each one is a testament to a mind that looked at the world and dared to ask what else might be possible. While the specific names and stories are lost to time, the collective message of these works is unmistakably clear. Our ancestors were not merely surviving, they were seeking. They used the walls of the earth as a canvas to explore the boundaries between the seen and the unseen, the human and the animal, the earthly and the divine. These paintings are the foundational acts of human culture, the first attempts to build a bridge between the tangible world of the hunt and the intangible world of meaning. In them we see the origins of mythology, the dawn of spiritual thought, and the birth of narrative itself. They are humanity's first recorded what-if. The true subject of these ancient galleries, then, is not the unknown creature but the knowing artist. It is the human spirit that 40,000 years ago felt compelled to crawl into the deepest dark, lift a torch, and give form to the formless. That impulse to depict the undepictable, to make permanent the fleeting visions of dream and trance, is a thread that connects us directly to those long-gone hands. We may have traded ochre for pixels and cave walls for digital screens, but the core drive remains: to explain, to wonder, and to create. Perhaps the greatest legacy of these mysterious paintings is the space they hold open for our own imagination. They invite us to participate in the mystery, to look at a bird-headed man or a spiral-horned antelope and construct our own stories, to feel a spark of recognition across an immense gulf of time. They remind us that some of the most important human questions are not answered with facts, but explored through symbols. If these echoes from the deep past have stirred your curiosity, the conversation is just beginning. Share in the comments below which of these unknown beings lingered in your mind the longest. Was it the commanding presence of the sorcerer, the tragic mystery of the bird-headed man, or the elegant abstraction of the geometric beast? For more journeys into history's most captivating enigmas, consider subscribing. Thank you for walking through these ancient galleries with me and for listening to the whispers left on stone.